What's up everyone, how are you all? Today we are back with another amazing Naruto story. What if Naruto neglected by his parents for his siblings? If you enjoy, then please like, share and do comments. And also check the description box to original creator of this beautiful creation. Namikaze Minato, or more commonly known as the Yondaime Hokage of the village hidden in the leaves, now stood on the balcony of the Hokage's tower gazing at the whole of his village that had come for his speech. Next to him was a woman with fair, almost pale skin, purple-tinted eyes, and long red hair. She was Minato's wife Namikaze Kushina, but what was even more important was what she was holding in her arms. For in her arms were two newborn girls. Stealing a glance at his wife and the two children she was carrying, he let out a sign and turned his attention back to people below him. The civilians and the remaining shinobi that had survived the destruction of the Kyuubi no Kitsune's rampage were present. Yesterday, a tragedy occurred that has left us weaker than we have ever been. Many have died in order to protect our village and the ones they hold dear. I stand before you today with the heroes of our village. Minato took the two children from his wife and returned to crowd. Inside these two children are separately sealed both the Kyuubi's yin and yang chakra. The faces of the people were a mixture of fear, horror, and too many confusion. But do not be afraid, for I have used my most powerful seals to imprison the demon's soul so that it shall never again return to our lands. Now you have not only me, but these two infants, two of my three very own children, to thank for this day. After a few seconds of letting this information set in, Minato started again. People of Konoha, I may be the one who had bested the Kyuubi, the one who ended its rampage from destroying our village, but it was my children who truly stopped the great beast. If it wasn't for their birth on such an ill-fated night, the fate of Konoha and that of our own would have been sealed. Giving yet another pause, he hoisted the two twins into the air. My children will, and shall from this day on be known and recognized as the heroes who saved our village from its destruction from a powerful demon. I give you my daughters, Namikaze Mito and Namikaze Naoko. As if on K, the crowd below released roars of joy, approval, and acceptance of the two baby girls as their young Hokage smiled brightly, thinking of the future with his wife and three kids. Years later, little Naruto had already figured out that his sister was more lavished and more loved than he. On Christmas, during the family parties, family dinners, family vacations, not once did they remember him. He was left at home alone. Sometimes when his parents were so attentive of Naoko and Mito, they would forget about his food. And when they did notice him, they would only nod their heads as if he wasn't of any importance. On their fourth birthday, Naruto was forgotten again. That was 3 years ago. Today he would go and ask his parents if he could train with them and his twins like they had been doing for months. They told him to stop being a child, which he is, since he is the eldest. They've already told him about the fox sealed inside his siblings, and they said they needed more practice in order to control the beast's chakra so that they wouldn't get hurt, or anyone for that matter, when they accidentally tap into its power. And apparently he would only hold his siblings back, mumbled Minato, which Kushina silently agreed upon. Discouraged for what they thought he didn't hear, Naruto went back to his room. In the village things were no different. Since the villagers would ask if the Hokage had a son, they would only laugh and tell him to go away, saying to stop lying. Others that were a tad more violent beat him up. He told his parents about his beatings, but since his body oddly heals faster than even a Jinchuriki, his parents thought that he was only doing it for attention and sent him to his room. On October 10th, the day of his 6th birthday, Naruto walked out of his room and went out to see that his parents were getting the gear ready for Mito and Naoko's training. He went to ask if he could train with them today, but when he got close he heard them only talking about Mito and Naoko and how happy they would be when they passed the academy with their skills. Then they mentioned clear disappointment towards their son for not being as skilled as their sisters. Naruto cried hard that night with no one to comfort him. The days seemed to go the same way they went by, every day the same way as they always did. Right now a 7-year-old Naruto watched his parents teach his younger sisters Naoko and Mito their fighting styles with a scroll of jutsus on the side for later. He was hoping that today would be the day that they would finally train him. He hoped for that every day for as long as he could remember. He wanted their acknowledgement, their approval, their acceptance. Sadly, every time Naruto went up and asked his parents, they would just tell him to leave them alone and continue to focus on his siblings' training, since they believed that they needed it more since she had the Kyuubi sealed into them years ago on the day of her birth. Even his own godparents, Jiraiya and Tsunade, in their eyes he wasn't worth their time. After being rejected for the last time, Naruto took it upon himself to get stronger, so he began reading a book on chakra control and learn all he could. He thought that if he learned some things on his own, his parents would train him just like his sisters. As Naruto left his family's compound, he headed straight to one of the training fields that were open for any shinobi in training to use. Little did he know that he was being tailed by a certain moon-eyed kunoichi. Arriving at the field, he opened up the scroll that he had taken from his father's library. It was on intermediate chakra control. Reading the first line, he saw that it was on tree walking. Tree climbing. In this exercise, the user gathers chakra at the bottom of their feet. Second, the shinobi must begin walking up a tree as if it were the ground. However, if the user gathers too much chakra, the tree will break and send you flying in the opposite direction. Gather too little chakra and you will not stick and will fall. The user must gather the correct amount of chakra to stick to the tree trunk. However, this is just the beginning and the easiest part. The user must then be able to sustain the ability to remain on the tree for minutes to up to hours. As soon as he finished reading the instructions, he placed the scroll down and walked over to the tree and began to gather chakra at the bottom of his feet. When he thought that he had enough, he placed his right foot on the tree and then the left. So far he was able to stick, meaning he gathered the right amount, but just as he started, he finished when he took the next step. Naruto felt his chakra slip and he fell back to the ground. "Ah man, I thought I had it. I guess that this isn't as easy as I thought it would be," Naruto said. "Well, no pain no gain." With that, he went back to practice his tree climbing, hoping that it would impress his father and mother. Since he was so busy training, he failed to notice that he was being watched. A few yards behind an old tree peeked a young purple-haired maiden. "You can do it, Naruto-kun. I know you can," she said as she continued to watch the blonde boy practice. Hinata and Naruto meet a couple of years ago after Naruto saved her from some bullies twice and she developed a crush. In the couple of years they would meet and play from time to time and became close friends. But both of them were too dense to notice that both of them had a crush on each other. Sometimes Naruto would go on and practice secretly or go on odd jobs for some reasons unknown. This made Hinata a bit lonely, so she developed a habit of following and observing the blonde. Comment. She observed him when he was ignored by his parents. She saw him when some villagers tried to call him a liar when he claimed to be the Hokage's son, and occasionally beat him up because they got irritated of his lie, which naturally enraged her and tried to tell her dad, which Hiyashi dismissed as an excuse for a way to build character. She even saw the blonde boy doing odd jobs like delivering paper and helping out in some cleaning for the old. He apparently wasn't given any allowance by his parents since they were too busy with the twins. But even though he was under such circumstances, he never gave up on trying to impress his family and never once did he lose his smile. Which was why Hinata was so impressed with him and was proud to call him her friend. It was around in the afternoon when the blonde boy finally finished perfecting his tree climbing. He thought that this should be enough. For now it was time to go and show his parents what he could do. This was sure to impress them to a certain extent that they would have to train him. Naruto was running towards the Uzumaki Namikaze compound in hot haste and excitement. Hinata on the other hand was trying her best to keep up with her crush. She wanted to see it, the face of his parents' shock as they see the talent and hard work Naruto-kun put into tree climbing. She couldn't control her smug look as she thought about it. 10 minutes later Naruto entered the compound and went straight to the backyard, hoping that his father was still teaching his sisters. To his luck, he was still there along with his mother Kushina and his siblings. All four were currently eating ramen that was probably from Ichiraku. But who could blame them, after all ramen is the food of the gods. Naruto was not here to praise the godly ramen, he was here to show them his new trick. "Dad, Mom," Naruto called out as he approached them. The two of them turned to see their son walking toward them. Inwardly they rolled their eyes, knowing what he would want. "What is it now, Naruto?" asked Minato as he put his bowl of ramen down. "I was wondering if I could show you guys something?" asked Naruto. "Show us something? Fine, go ahead and show us," the older blonde said. Naruto, hearing this, smiled and ran over to the closest tree, and without using hand signs anymore he ran up the tree using only his chakra. Hanging for a few seconds he jumped back down. He had a smile on his face as he looked up at his parents and sisters. He noticed many different emotions, but mostly anger. His Naoko had dropped her bowl of ramen and her face was as red as her hair. She couldn't believe what she had seen. Her no-good brother had learned something she hadn't yet. Mito was somewhat proud at first for her brother's achievement, but then she thought of the dangers he put himself into when he trained without supervision. She was infuriated. Kushina gritted her teeth at the display her son had done and was about to move to berate him. Minato however moved her faster. "So what do you think?" the small blonde asked. The answer came in the form of a thunderous slap across his face that sent him flying into the tree he had run up to. "What the hell are you thinking pulling such a stunt?" Minato yelled at his only son, "Who taught you the tree climbing technique?" "I took a scroll from your study," Naruto stuttered. "What? How dare you take something without permission?" This time it was Kushina who said this. "We give you everything that you need, a roof to sleep under, the clothes on your back, and we feed you, occasionally, and this is how you repay us. We told you that you would start your training when the academy begins. But no, you go and steal from your father's study just to try and get us to train you. We're training your sister so they can harness the power of the Kyuubi so it won't be a threat to her when she's older, but you on the other hand don't need the training. Now go to your room and stay there." Tears had begun to fall from his eyes. He had never been screamed at like that. His parents hated him, there was nothing more to it. And his eyes then fell on Naoko who was coming in his direction. He heard Mito behind her shouting, "Naoko-chan, stop. Naruto ni, you idiot." She yelled at him and ended it with a slap that made his face hit the dirt. Mito immediately went towards Naruto, but was stopped by a hand on his shoulder. She looked up and saw his father shaking his head. Then the older blonde looked towards Naruto. "You heard your mother, get up and go to your room, and you're not getting any dinner," Minato said harshly. Right then, Naruto's heart shattered, then suddenly a constant stream of natural chakra was continuously filling his body. His vision blurred as his once blue eyes started changing to silver with 4 concentric lines. The constant flow of natural chakra was unnoticed by his parents since they didn't practice sage arts. Even Minato gave up the technique since it was impractical for a ninja who is in the battle to suddenly meditate and enter sage mode. Naruto was in a daze from the constant flow of energy he was receiving from nature. He could feel his body and bones getting stronger by the second, his mind clearer and his reactions faster. However, he was suddenly awoken by his mother's screech, and his silver eyes turned back to blue. "Didn't you hear me? I said go to your room, mister," shouted Kushina. Naruto scrambled to get up and run but suddenly stopped by the door. He turned back, then glared at his family with hate and anger which made them froze in place. Naruto, the boy who was like a ray of sunshine and was always smiling like an idiot, was now glaring at them. He said in a not so loud but clear voice, "I hate you all." With that, Naruto ran into the house and headed straight for his room. His family stood stunned at the last thing they were told. They felt a slight pang of pain in their chest for some reason. "Oh no, Naruto-kun," said Hinata from her hiding spot as she was speechless in what she just saw. How could they, she thought as tears fell from her eyes as she went home feeling helpless for the blonde. Later that night after dinner had ended, Minato and Kushina were in their bedroom thinking about what had transpired today. "You know, I think that we went a little too far with the way we treated Naruto," Kushina said as she put on her nightgown. "Yeah, maybe I shouldn't have hit him, but I just felt so irked that he went behind our back and learned how to access his chakra without telling us," Minato said as he laid on the bed. "He could have gotten hurt, yet I think we hurt him more. Yeah, I think it's our fault too. I mean, he's been asking us to train him along with Mito and Naoko. Yet we ignored him," Kushina said, joining her husband on the bed. "Maybe we should help him a little. I mean, let's at least teach him the basic and some low-level ninjutsu and some taijutsu. I guess we should. I'll have a shadow clone start teaching him tomorrow," Minato said as he turned to look at the red-hair woman. "Hopefully he will forgive us." "No, I'm sure he'll forgive us if I teach him my Rasengan." "Yes, I'm sure he will, honey. Now let's go to sleep," his wife said as she closed her eyes. With the twins. Slap. "How could you do that to Ni-san?" shouted Mito as she slapped Naoko on the face. Naoko looked down in shame. She knew she went a little overboard by slapping his brother. "I couldn't forgive him, Nei-chan," said Naoko in a low voice with his gaze still on the floor. "What?" asked Mito. Then Naoko met her gaze and shouted, "He kept a secret from us. I can't forgive him. He could have gotten hurt. It was dangerous to tamper with his own chakra, you know that. What would have happened if he got crippled because of his stupidity or worse?" "We can't lose Naruto ni," said Naoko as she finally broke down and cried. Mito was honestly taken aback. She didn't know Naoko cared so much for their ni-san. She finally understood why she had such an extreme reaction. Mito got down on her knees and hugged Naoko. "Come on Naoko-chan. Let's go apologize to ni-san," said Mito. "But Mito ne-san," said Naoko. "No buts now Naoko-chan. I know how you feel about the matter and I know you care a lot about ni-san. But, can you look at it in his perspective? He probably thinks we hate him now," said Mito as Naoko's eyes suddenly went wide in realization. "Oh no, Mito ne-chan, we have to apologize. No, I had to apologize to him," said Naoko as she hurriedly got up and went towards Naruto's room. Mito immediately joined her on the way. They had never been in Naruto's room before. So they knocked on the door to finally see how their brother's room was decorated. When no answer came, they wondered if he was asleep or maybe he was just mad. Yeah, that was it, he was mad. But they were not about to give up, so Naoko grabbed the doorknob and to her surprise it was unlocked. Having curiosity get the better of them, they turned the knob, then Naoko and Mito pushed the door opening the room and walked in. Mito's small violet eyes and Naoko's sky blue eyes widened at the sight. The room was empty, empty of life. The walls were white with no posters or pictures like the ones they have in their room. The bed was well made. In fact, the only thing she could see in the room was the bed, a dresser, a desk, and the closet in the corner of the room. Also, their brother was nowhere to be found. Naoko was about to call their parents when Mito saw a white envelope on the desk. Maybe that would say where their ni-san went. Mito made her way to the desk and grabbed the letter. Opening it, she pulled out the folded piece of paper. When she began to read, the only thing she could say was nothing. Instead, she let out a loud scream and began sobbing. Worried, Naoko hurriedly asked what was wrong, but she only gave her the letter. She began to read it, and not long after she was on her knees sobbing while mumbling, "This is all my fault." When Kushina closed her eyes hoping to get a good night's sleep, she was forced awake when she felt the alarm seals in the compound go off. Both she and Minato bolted out of their bed and ran to see what it was. The seals went off in Naruto's room. Before they could do anything, an ear-splitting scream came from inside the house. Running back inside, Kushina went to find their daughters, whom she was sure had been the ones who screamed, Minato closely behind her. When they arrived, they saw Naoko and Mito's room empty, but heard sobbing coming from another room. Closing in, they saw the door to Naruto's room opened with the light on. Kushina went inside and was stunned at how bare it was in there. There were only the white walls, the floor was clean, but it was devoid of life, something that shouldn't be foreseen in a 7-year-old room. She saw Mito on the bed unresponsive and Naoko on the floor crying while gripping what seemed to be a note. Instantly she felt a horrible sense of dread. Slowly she approached her daughter and kneeled next to her, bringing her into her embrace. Minato did the same for Mito. "Naoko, what happened?" she asked softly. "Naruto ni, I came to say sorry, and Mito ne-chan came with me, but he's not here, he's gone," Naoko told her mother as she cried even harder. At this moment, Jiraiya and Tsunade, who were alerted by the seal, arrived and was speechless at the sight of the lifeless room. "Kushina," Tsunade spoke. Kushina didn't answer her. Instead, she took the paper that Naoko was clutching and began to read it out loud. "Today I finally understood how you all feel about me. I'm nothing but a burden to all of you, so I took the decision to leave. Now you can be the family you wanted to be, without someone to burden you. And be nothing but an annoyance in your life. Goodbye Minato Namikaze, and Kushina Namikaze. Hope you enjoy the rest of your life with your favorite daughters. Naruto." The note was short, but it still explained how he felt. Now the Hokage and his family had lost their only son because of their discrimination. Naruto was making his way through the village. His destination was the top of the Hokage's monument. Beyond the forest was a waterfall. Behind it was an old lab of Orochimaru. After clearing it and dumping the corpses at training ground, he made it his own base where he sometimes sleep in when his former family forgot about him and locked him off the compound. There were a lot of weapons, jutsu scrolls, foodstuff enough for a few months, all stored in a storage scroll, and even a manual for advanced sealing techniques. There were a lot of rooms, mostly for experiments, but the others were living quarters as well as a huge training ground equal to that of the Chunin exam stage. At first he didn't use the facilities and didn't learn any of the jutsus as he was waiting for his family to train him themselves. Sadly, that was a foolish notion, one that he learned the hard way. He was planning on staying at his hideout for a few weeks to hide before using a henge to walk out the south gate where two lazy chunin guard the gate. Sigh. He sighed as he neared the training grounds. However, before he could get there he heard a sobbing sound in an alleyway as he passed the Hyuga compound. Curious, since it reminded him of himself when he was first beat up by the damn villagers. Our blonde hero went ahead and checked who it was. To his surprise, he saw the most beautiful girl in his books, his only friend, his crush and best friend Hinata-chan. She was currently sobbing while her knees was on her chest. Her whole body was in a fetal position. Hinata-chan, what's wrong and what happened? Startled at such a scene, he asked worriedly. Seeing Naruto, Hinata immediately glomped him in a hug and cried even more as she buried her face on his chest. He asked what was wrong and why was she crying, but she didn't answer. Naruto caressed her back and whispered comforting words to her until she calmed down. Minutes later, Hinata finally calmed down and Naruto decided to ask her again. What happened, Hinata-chan? Seeing him by her side, Hinata began to blush, but then she remembered what happened and she was on the verge of tears again. Naruto, seeing this, hugged her once more and told her, "It's okay Hinata-chan, I'm here, as he caressed her back. She calmed down and told him what happened. Apparently during the sparring session with her year-old sister Hanabi, which she lost, Hiyashi deemed her weak and unworthy of the title clan heir. During the meeting after dinner, he announced Hanabi as the new clan heir. Shocked at her father's decision, Hinata ran and was about to leave. When Hiyashi ordered the guards to stop her, he formally made another announcement that Hyuga Hinata is no longer part of the Hyuga clan, disavowed as his daughter, and banished from the compound until she proves herself worthy. This earned a shocked reaction from the clan, especially the branch members, since Hinata was the kindest of the main house and never treated them as slaves. They branded her with the caged bird seal and then threw her in the alley where they were now. Naruto was disgusted by their clan. He comforted Hinata once more since she started crying again when she finished her story. "It's okay Hinata-chan, I'm here," he said. "Hey, I've got an idea. Why don't you come with me?" asked Naruto. "What do you mean?" asked Hinata as she finally stopped crying and looked at Naruto in the eye. Which made him blush and gulp silently as her face was currently only a few inches from his. Cough. Naruto faked a cough and told her what happened earlier. Hinata was not that surprised as she actually witnessed what happened with his family. What surprised her was the obvious scorn he had when he talked about his parents, which he now addressed as Hokage-san and Kushina-san. "I'm sorry for what happened, Naruto-kun," said Hinata. "You don't have to be sorry Hinata-chan, it wasn't your fault, they were such bad parents," he said while scratching his cheek with his index finger. "So would you like to come with me?" asked Naruto. "I don't know Naruto-kun. I'm weak, I might only become a burden," said Hinata embarrassedly as she played with her fingers, which Naruto found adorable. "You're not weak Hinata-chan, you are loyal, hard-working, kind, and beautiful," said Naruto as Hinata looked away and blushed. "Look at me," he said as he used his hand to lift Hinata's chin and looked at her straight in the eye. "I am hated through the village because I claim to be the Hokage's son. My parents and godparents think of me as nothing more than an extra baggage with no talent, but I don't give up. You know why?" he asked as she shook her head. "Because that is my nindo, and someday I will prove them wrong. I said many times that I will be the Hokage, and by Kami, and a lot of blood, toil, tears, sweat and elbow grease," he whispered. "I will be the Hokage," said Naruto as he grinned at her to his fullest. "So Hinata-chan, would you like to come with me? Do you want to prove your clan that they were wrong about you and that it was their biggest mistake to banish you?" asked Naruto. Hinata wiped the tears in her eyes and looked at Naruto with determination, then said, or more like shouted, "I am." Naruto giggled at her response and said, "Then come on," as he stood up and held his hand out to Hinata, which she happily took, and then made their way to Naruto's hideout. Once they left, someone peeked at the corner of said alley. Hanabi looked at her sister with pride and said, "Good for you, Nei-chan." Minato and Kushina were hell-bent on bringing Naruto back after they found the note. But when they started searching they couldn't find any signs of him, not a clue, in or out of the village, for a whole week. It was like he disappeared out of nowhere. At the Uzumaki Namikaze compound. Minato Koi, where could he be? Asked a frantic Kushina as she paced back and forth. I don't know, Kushina-chan. Jiraiya and all the ninjas available had already been dispatched. But none of them found any clue of Naruto, the old blonde said. Then Mito and Naoko came in, dashing through the door. Tou-chan, Ka-chan, they said as they leapt towards both parents. Both Minato and Kushina caught them in a hug. Then they asked them, did you find him? Did you find Naruto ni? They said with a hopeful glint on their face. Kushina couldn't look at them straight and averted her gaze, while Minato broke the bad news to them. I'm sorry girls, we still don't have a clue. Noticing the solemn look on their parents' faces, Naoko got teary-eyed as she remembered what she did to her brother. However, before she could sob, Mito reassured her by placing a hand on her shoulder. They looked up to their parents with determination clear on their face as they said, don't worry, Tu-chan, Ka-chan. We'll find Naruto ni even if we have to search the entire world for him. Mito? Naoko trying to keep her tears at bay. Taken aback by their daughter's determination, both parents looked at each other and finally smiled. They thought, you see Naruto ni, everyone here loves you. Please come back. Suddenly, Tsunade Senju along with his apprentice Shizune came in the door a bit panicky. Minato, she said, you have to look at this. Did you find Naruto ni? Asked Naoko as Mito was eyeing her hopefully as well. No, I'm sorry Naoko-chan, Mito-chan. But could you give us some privacy, said Tsunade. Why? What is it about, Tsunade-ba-chan? Asked Kushina. Tsunade looked at both Mito and Naoko before turning to Minato and Kushina. Let's move to somewhere private first. It's very important, please listen to Tsunade-sensei, pleaded Shizune as Taunton let out a serious, boo-hee tilde. Minato and Kushina looked at each other before telling the girls to go frolicking. Then Minato grabbed both Tsunade and Shizune's shoulder, while Kushina hugged him from behind and they teleported to his study. Once there, Kushina performed a few hand signs before finishing with a fuin. Alright, I've activated the privacy seals. What is this about Ba-chan? Asked Kushina. Tsunade sighed before she said, it's about Naruto's medical record. I told Shizune to dig his files in case we may get a lead to where that brat went. What we found surprised me, said Tsunade. What do you mean? Asked Minato narrowing his eyes. Hokage-sama, we found out that Naruto had visited the hospital and was confined many times, said Shizune, which earned the gasp of both parents. Shizune-chan, what do you mean? Asked Kushina, who was starting to panic. Before we came here we investigated a little bit and found out that Naruto had been beaten up by the villagers multiple times for claiming he was your child, said Tsunade pointing at Minato. They did what? Asked an infuriated Kushina. They beat up your son for claiming he was your son, she said once more pointing at Minato. Why would they do that? Asked an unbelieving Minato. I'll kill them all, said an enraged Kushina as he reached for her sword and was about to slaughter the ignorant lot. But she was stopped by a glare from Tsunade. Calm down Kushina-chan, said Minato as he hugged his wife from behind. When she was finally calm, Tsunade continued. They did it, because the general public only knows that you have daughters. How they got to that conclusion was actually quite easy. Said Tsunade. What do you mean Ba-chan? How would they conclude that we only have children? Asked Kushina. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, added Minato as he questioned the intelligence of his village. Tsunade on the other hand massaged the bridge of her nose and said, ask yourselves this. When was the last time you took Naruto out with you when you ate at Ichiraku's or any place for that matter? When was the last time you mentioned Naruto to any of your friends? Said Tsunade as she paused and observed their reaction. Nothing? Can't think of anything? Then here's a simpler question. When was the last time you said I love you to Naruto? Asked Tsunade. They both thought about it for a few minutes, and then slowly realization struck them hard and they both paled. Kushina had the most drastic reaction as she deactivated the seals and dashed to take their family album. Minato, Tsunade and Shizune were not far behind. They all looked for any pictures of Naruto, but they never saw any. Christmas Eve, New Year's, etc. All of it was about the girls, even in every family outing he wasn't there. On their birthdays, which were supposed to be the same day, only Mito and Naoko were being congratulated and only 2 cakes were made. But for Naruto, there was nothing. They couldn't find anything. In her desperation, Kushina went into Naruto's room and looked for any picture frame. Lo and behold, there was one. She sighed in relief as she saw it, but froze once more when she saw what was inside. On his desk was a simple picture frame that had a few cracks on one side. She remembered throwing the frame out a few years ago since it was old, but that wasn't important now. Inside said frame was no picture but instead a clumsy drawing of their family. Minato, Kushina, Mito, and Naoko all hugging a smiling Naruto who was holding his hand up in a V peace sign. In the lower right corner of the picture was its title, "My Family," with a smiley face. She couldn't take it anymore and broke down crying. "No, this isn't true. Naruto, what have we done? My Sochi, please return to us. Mommy is sorry, please, just return, please." She pleaded towards his smiling drawing. Minato saw the picture and hurriedly hugged Kushina and started crying. "Minato Koi, what are we gonna do? What if we never find him? Or worse, what if we did find him and he doesn't want to come back? I'm scared. I can't take it. We never told him how much we loved him. We only ever scolded him and now he hates us for it. Our Naruto, our Sochi, our little bundle of joy who always seemed to fight off depression. He said he hates us. Minato, he said hates us, he hates us, said Kushina. Then she finally fainted from the stress. Minato, who heard what she said, couldn't take it in as well and cried like a newborn. He cursed himself for not tagging Naruto with his Hiraishin seal. Kushina and both Mito and Naoko had his mark on their ring finger wrapped around it like it was an actual ring. He made that seal to make sure that if something were to ever happen to them he could get to them in no time. Sure, he was tired when he finished tagging the three girls, but that wasn't an excuse to simply forget about Naruto. I mean, he freaking gave them their tags when they were 2 years old. And he forgot about giving him the tags for years. What a stupid father he was, he thought. And those villagers who were involved in hurting his son. I'll execute them all publicly for raising their hands on the son of the Yondaime. He will charge them all for the act of treason and slaughter them. Tsunade saw Minato's sad expression slowly morphing into a crazed look. She had a bad feeling about it, so she knocked him out. "Tsunade-sensei, why did you do that to Hokage-sama?" asked the brunette. "Didn't you see the look on his face? He is currently mentally unstable and is prone to make hasty decisions that he might regret in the long run, so before he did anything stupid." "I knocked him out," said Tsunade while shrugging. "Then what are we gonna do now?" asked Shizune. "I don't know, this is also partially our fault as well. If only I paid more attention to him," said Tsunade. "You can't blame yourself, Tsunade-sensei, it wasn't your fault," said Shizune. "Yeah, I know that, Shizune-chan, but if we can't blame ourselves for his neglect, then who can we blame?" asked Tsunade as she picked up Kushina and Minato and headed towards the hospital. Shizune followed after thinking about what her sensei said. It has been 5 years since Kushina had found Naruto's drawing and a lot of changes happened to Konoha. First was the interrogation of all civilians involved in beating up the son of the Yondaime, which was surprisingly planned out by the civilian council as well as Root under Danzo's supervision. Infuriated, Minato ordered all of his shinobi as well as Jiraiya, Tsunade, and of course his wife Kushina in finding out the location of Danzo's bases and private army. Because of Jiraiya's spy network, they easily found the bases and safe houses of all Root operatives. During the council meeting, Minato distracted the civilian council, the clan heads and Danzo, Homura, Kaharu and Hiruzen. While Kushina, Shikaku, Jiraiya, Kakashi, and Tsunade led a small group of elite Anbu operatives and infiltrated the Root bases and destroyed everything in sight. They also rescued a few children the same age as their daughters like Shin and Sai and removed the seals from their tongue. After gathering some evidence, said leaders went directly towards the council meeting to apprehend Danzo, the elders, Homura, Kaharu, and some of the more corrupted civilian council members. At first, Danzo was calm and said that their claims were preposterous. Homura and Kaharu as well as half the civilian council even backed them up. But after presenting them with the evidence, they all shut the fuck up while Danzo panicked and tried to attack the Hokage. Which he failed miserably, as Kushina got in the way and severed his left arm. They gasped at the sight when they saw his arm unfold in its bandages. It was pale white and full of matured Sharingan eyes. "Danzo, what is the meaning of this?" asked his enraged old teammate and previous Hokage. He knew that whitening side effect since he was the one that brought down the last of Orochimaru's labs. They were the Shodai's cells, their teacher's cells. This is all for the greater good of the village, the mummy claimed. You sick bastard, said Kushina as she moved to behead Danzo. Only to be a second delayed as the old god of shinobi whacked his head with a bowstaff, splattering his brains towards the council room. The shinobi council was then informed of what happened. They removed the corrupted members of the council as well as the elders and brought them to Ibiki and Anko for interrogation. Those who were involved or collaborated with Danzo were executed, while those who had something to do with Naruto's beating suffered in the hands of the Red Death. In conclusion, the civilian council were demoted and no longer had a voice in shinobi meetings. They only handle affairs of local civilian matters. The root operatives that had successfully been rehabilitated by Inoichi were given a second chance to join the ranks as official Konoha shinobi. But the extreme ones that were too far gone were executed on the spot. Konoha doesn't need cancerous individuals in its ranks. All in all, the military power of Konoha was greater than ever. Mito and Naoko's training was progressing better and better as well, since they wanted to immediately pass as ninjas and find their beloved Oni-chan. And with the help of Jiraiya and Tsunade they were now at high genin, low chunin level. Minato and Kushina still hadn't got over their son's disappearance. The only reason they haven't broken down was because of Mito and Naoko. They had to be strong for their daughters. There were sightings of said blonde and purple-haired girl all across the elemental nations. Places where major events had happened for the past years. Although, they were never tied to any of said events. Or at least that's what they want to believe since they were only kids. They already knew of Hinata accompanying him on his journey. However, when Hiashi was informed of such information, he just denied his involvement with Hinata and told the council that she was already disavowed and that a caged bird seal has been placed on said person. It utterly disgusted the council, but they couldn't do much as it was all within their authority, because it falls in the jurisdiction of clan matters. In the Land of Spring, or formerly Land of Snow, Naruto and Hinata were spotted with Princess Koyuki before the major events that changed their country forever happened. In the hidden waterfall village, they were spotted with a green-haired Kunoichi that was a year or two older than them. Said Kunoichi was later reported as the Jinchuriki of the Nanabi, which lead the forces of Waterfall to the front lines against an invasion. They repelled the invaders, but at the cost of Shiuki's life. The former leader of Waterfall. Good news though, is that the green-haired girl was no longer an outcast of the village, but was now accepted as their hero. In the Land of Moon, they had been spotted with Theod, the pregnant wife of their prince. It was said that she survived an assassination during his visit to the people and has now given birth to a healthy baby boy. And many others. Kushina would always take missions towards said lands in order to get a clue on their son's whereabouts. But the news that traveled from there to Konoha takes a few weeks. By the time Kushina gets to said places, they would already be gone. Hokage Tower. Kushina had just returned from another failed search mission pertaining the location of their son. She walked inside the Hokage's office and saw her husband cursing the vein of all Kage's paperwork. I swear to God they breed like rabbits, damn it, said Minato as Kushina giggled at his antics. Minato stood up and hurriedly asked, Kushina-chan, how was your mission? Did you find any clues on Naruto's whereabouts? Kushina stopped giggling after he heard Minato's words and hung her head down. Getting the gist of it, Minato said, I see, and went to hug Kushina. Minato-koi, that was the last clue we have on Naruto. We don't have any more leads. It's like he disappeared once more. What if he got himself hurt? I heard on the report from Kirigakure that he encountered a battle against S-rank shinobi. What if we don't find him? I can't do this anymore, Minato-koi. I just want our son back, said Kushina on the verge of tears. Shish, now Kushina-chan, we'll find him. We'll find him, said Minato as he comforted and caressed his wife. Who knows, maybe he'll just pop up outside the gates by himself. Yeah, answered Kushina absent-mindedly, as she really didn't believe such a thing would happen. Outside the gates of Konoha, two preteens were side by side holding each other's hands as they walked towards the gates of Konoha. One was a boy, with blonde hair and blue eyes. He was now in height and had a lean but masculine build. Gone were the tracksuit with the kill me orange color. In its place were now black steel-toed shoes, black leather pants, a standard Anbu shirt, and a blue jacket with an orange Uzumaki swirl on the back. On the side of his waist was an O-katana that has a mysterious aura. The other one was a girl, in height. Has purple-black neck-length hair. Has all the right curves in all the right places. Add that to her beautiful, cute face and C-cup breasts, and every man in her vicinity will always take a few peeks at her, much to the annoyance of his blonde companion. She wore a standard black Anbu sandals which were really lightweight, with matching black stocking, and a black battle kimono that has a purple strap around her waist. The kimono's length was long enough to hide her knees, but just enough that it didn't hinder her movements. A.N. Search for Yato's kimono from Noragami. We're back Hinata-hime, said the blonde. Yes, we're finally back Naru-kun, said the now identified Hinata. Now how about we show this place how to party, said Naruto as he was planning to visit his favorite food shack Ichiraku. We still have to participate in the genin exams, remember? Asked Hinata. But that's still a week away, said Naruto. Yes, but we still have to report to the Hokage if we want to participate in the exam, said Hinata sternly, which Naruto visibly flinched at. Do we have to? Asked Naruto. Yes, we do. Now I know how you feel about the Hokage-sama. But let's put that aside for now. Or are you gonna go back on your word and fail as a ninja? Asked Hinata. Alright, said Naruto as he grumbled about unfair girlfriends. What was that, Naru-kun? Asked Hinata smiling sweetly at Naruto, which sent shivers to the blonde's spine. Nothing Hina-hime, I was just saying that you look beautiful in your new clothes, said Naruto with a teasing grin, which caused Hinata to blush like a strawberry. Oh you're such a tease, Naru-kun, said Hinata as he hugged Naruto's arms and placed her head on his shoulder and walked towards the gate. They were in the front of a little booth on the left side of Konoha's gates, and they saw Kotetsu and Azuma the same as always, asleep. Hinata couldn't help but laugh a little, while Naruto just rolled his eyes towards the two eternal Chunin. No wonder they got away even with Hinata's imperfect henge back then, damn slackers he thought. Coughing once Naruto addressed the two. Excuse me, no response came. He tried again but their snoring only got louder. Getting a tick mark on his head, Naruto slammed his fist towards the two's head. Boom, boom, gah! My head, said Kotetsu and Azuma as they jumped out of their little booth while clutching their heads, then got into their battle stance. Who! Shouted Kotetsu in anger. Why are you here? What is your purpose in Konoha? Asked Azuma still disoriented. My name is Naruto and this here is my girlfriend Hinata, he said while pointing at the purple-haired beauty. We came to Konoha to formally become ninja, said Naruto in an indifferent tone. Oh, so you want to join the village? Then why did you say so? Oh, and why'd you hit us? Asked Kotetsu as he lowered his guard. It's common for ambitious civilians to want to join the strongest ninja village there is. Because you were slacking off, said Naruto while Hinata giggled at the side. Kotetsu and Azuma looked at each other then scratched the back of their heads, making excuses like, we were just resting our eyes, said Kotetsu. Yeah, we were totally alert agreed Azuma. Yeah well, anyways what do we need to do to join the village? Asked Naruto ignoring their excuses. Ah, wait said Kotetsu as he went to the booth and took a pen and the village log. Just fill this up and we'll escort you to the Hokage Tower. Thank you, but we don't need the escort. We already know our way around the village, said Naruto as he took the pen and wrote down his name and purpose of visit, then gave it to Hinata. Have you been here before? Asked Azuma suspiciously. You could say that, said Naruto indifferently. Well, okay but please make sure you go to the Hokage Tower first before loitering around. You need to get approval and a temporary identification from Hokage-sama. Otherwise local ninja might apprehend you, said Kotetsu. We'll keep that in mind, said Naruto as he turned and walked towards the tower. Hinata bowed to both Chunin before immediately catching up to the blonde. While they watched the back of both newcomers leave, Azuma couldn't help but think they looked familiar and apparently he wasn't the only one. Hey Azuma, don't they remind you of someone? Asked Kotetsu. Yeah. I have a feeling that we're forgetting something important? After a few seconds they both shouted in realization, Naruto. Damn it, that was the Yondaime's lost son. How could we forget? Said Kotetsu as he facepalmed. Quickly inform Hokage-sama, said a panicking Izumo while Kotetsu nodded and body flickered away. Walking on the streets of Konoha, Naruto and Hinata were gathering quite a bit of attention. The girls had heart-shaped eyes directed towards Naruto. He heard whispers of, "So handsome, look at those muscles, I think he surpasses Uchiha-sama by far, I wonder if we could separate him from that girl, era ufufu." Great, fangirls thought Naruto. From the boys there was a mix of admiration for Hinata, and jealousy for Naruto. "That girl is so pretty, she's on par with the Namikaze princesses, lucky bastard, he's kind of cute, I wonder if he's straight." Hearing that last comment sent shivers down Naruto's spine, and he absent-mindedly hugged Hinata by the waist and moved her bit more closer to him as if protecting her, all the while glaring at some of the guys looking at them. "What's wrong, Naru-kun?" asked Hinata. She was surprised by the sudden intimate contact of her beloved, not that it bothered her in any way. In fact, she actually appreciates it, but her mind kept on thinking about naughty things. "No bad, Hinata, bad," she thought. "It's nothing, Hinaheim," said Naruto with a scowl directed at the people. However, he had to admit that both him and Hinata look quite good together. They look more mature than their peers and even act more mature, since they needed it in order to survive the world outside. Passing through the Akamichi barbecue shop, they heard familiar voices calling to them. "Hinata? And is that you, Naruto?" said a pineapple-haired teen. Naruto?" asked his big-boned friend. Hinata and Naruto looked towards the duo and smiled. "Hello there, Shikamaru-san, Choji-san. How've you been?" greeted Hinata, while Naruto just nonchalantly waved, "Yo. So it really is you guys. Where have you been all this years? The whole village is practically looking all over for you," said Choji. "Well, we've been around," said Naruto indifferently. Shikamaru and Choji were one of the few people he actually befriended, but because they were both clan heirs they started to get distanced with Naruto when they started to train their clan jutsus. Hinata knew them since she was a former heir. She saw them in her birthday parties but never really got too close to them. "Troublesome, I'm guessing you've returned to take the academy's graduation exam?" asked Shikamaru. Sharp as ever, Shikamaru-san. "Yes, we are here to take the graduation exam and finally become ninjas," said Hinata. Choji and Shikamaru were taken aback. Hinata just answered confidently with no signs of stuttering. Noticing their reactions, Hinata asked, "What?" while tilting her head. Both of them actually blushed at the gesture. They didn't notice it immediately, but Hinata had matured quite beautifully. "We are just taken aback by your transformation. I mean, back then you always stutter," explained Choji while opening a bag of potato chips that seemed to appear out of nowhere. "Yeah, especially around Naruto," added Shikamaru. Hinata blushed embarrassed as she looked at the blonde, while the latter was teasingly grinning at her. The purple-haired beauty pouted a little, but after a quick kiss on the cheek from our blonde hero she regained her composure and answered. "Well, as you can see, a lot of things can change when you've got a very encouraging and supporting boyfriend." "All right," answered the two as both of them were surprised by how intimate the duo were, but did not question any further because it was troublesome. "Anyways, where are you guys going?" asked Shikamaru, snapping out of his daze. "We're going to the Hokage Tower to get registered for the graduation exams," said Naruto. "Then it's a good thing you guys returned today," said Choji in between mouthfuls of chips. "What do you mean, Choji-san?" asked Hinata. "Troublesome, what he means is that the graduation exams has been moved tomorrow. If you were a day too late you might have been too late," explained Shikamaru. "Really?" asked Hinata. "Yeah, really," said Choji. "Well, it's a good thing we didn't get sidetracked," said Naruto with a wry smile on his face, while Hinata just rolled her eyes at him, remembering the first thing her beloved wanted to do when they returned was to party. "Anyways, it was nice seeing you guys again. We're going home now, since Dad wants us to practice our teamwork with Ino," said Choji. He then waved goodbye and turned to leave. Shikamaru followed right behind him, but paused for a second, turned then said, "Welcome back," before leaving to follow his big-boned friend. "Guess we have to hurry to the tower now, Hinaheim," said Naruto as Hinata nodded in confirmation. Both then turned towards the tower, and walked a little faster than their previous pace. Hokage Tower. While Minato and Kushina were busy licking each other's wounds, a knock on the door broke them out of their daze. Minato composed himself and sat down on the Hokage chair, while Kushina stood beside him like a secretary. A few more knocks and Minato told them to come in. Kotetsu, when given the signal, immediately rushed in, seemingly out of breath. Raising his eyebrows, Minato asked, "What is it? What's wrong, Kotetsu?" Catching his breath, Kotetsu composed himself as best as he could before answering, "Hokage-sama, I have great news." "Okay, then spill it," said Minato, gesturing to continue. "Naruto-sama has returned to the village," Kotetsu said as both Namikaze couple froze. "Hokage Tower. What?" shouted the red-hot habanero. "Is that true, Kotetsu? Are you sure it really was Naruto?" asked Minato a bit excitedly. Taking a few steps back from their unadulterated enthusiasm, Kotetsu said, stuttering, "Why yes, Hokage-sama, cough, we are sure it was him. I remember a photo of him being circulated a few years ago when he was announced missing. He looked exactly the same, though granted he was now more mature and taller. He is also accompanied by the rumored Hyuga girl from the reports, further confirming his identity." "Really?" asked Kushina, almost in tears from happiness. "Minato, he's back. Our Sochi is finally back." "Where is he, Kotetsu?" asked Minato, a bit more composed than his wife. "He is currently on his way to the tower now, Hokage-sama," said Kotetsu. "Did he say the reason for his return?" asked Minato as Kushina perked her ears, waiting for the answer. "Hi Hokage-sama," he said, or rather his friend said. "He was here to take the academy's graduation exam to officially become ninja," said Kotetsu. "That's great," said Kushina. "I don't know, does he even have the skills to pass the exam?" asked Minato. "What are you saying, Minato? Are you implying our Sochi isn't good enough?" asked Kushina with a hint of anger in her voice. "I'm not saying that, I mean he even learned the tree climbing exercise without supervision," exclaimed Minato, immediately hoping his wife wouldn't lash out on him. "Then what are you implying then?" asked Kushina in a cold tone. "That he hadn't had any supervision in his training. He was a 7-year-old when he left, for God's sake. He may be a prodigy, but self-training can only get you so far," explained Minato. "I see, and it's all our fault," said Kushina as she immediately blamed herself and looked down in shame. "Calm down, Kushina-chan," said the Yondaime as he moved to hug his wife. "I can't, Minato, what if he fails and leave again?" said Kushina. "That won't happen," reassured Minato. "We won't let it happen. We'll apologize for neglecting him, for leaving him to himself, for not believing in him at times when he claimed he was beaten. He might not forgive us immediately, but I'm sure we can make it up to him if we offer K-train him. Then we'll bond with him and show him every day how much we love him, until he forgives us," said Minato as Kushina just silently nodded. "Now, Kotetsu," said Minato as he addressed the quiet Chunin. "Hi Hokage-sama," said Kotetsu. "I need you to do something for me," said Minato. "Hi, what is it, Hokage-sama?" asked Kotetsu. "Go to the Namikaze compound and inform Mito and Naoko about their brother's return. Have them report here as soon as possible," said Minato. "Hi, Hokage-sama," said Kotetsu as he immediately flickered away. A few minutes later, Mito and Naoko appeared with Kotetsu in a body flicker. After Minato dismissed him, Mito and Naoko immediately questioned their parents. "Tu-chan, Ka-chan, is it true?" asked Naoko excitedly. "Is Ni-sama really back?" asked a fidgety Mito. Mito and Naoko had grown quite beautifully throughout the years. Naoko was like a female version of her brother, like the canon version of Naruto's jutsu. The only difference is that she is a bit short at. She has a heart-shaped face with whisker marks that complements her cuteness, blue eyes that sparkle like the sea, and beautiful golden blonde hair like her father, which was tied in a side ponytail. Her butt was plump and her bust was well developed, rivaling Hinata's C-cup. She is wearing a standard Anbu's set of clothing, only except for a vest she wears her brother's unzipped old orange jacket with an Uzumaki swirl at the back, over her sleeveless shirt. As for Mito, she is like a mini version of Kushina but with shoulder-length hair. Her body exudes the aura of maturity and eye at the same time. She has all the right curves in all the right places. Her bust was bit smaller than her sister, but still in the range of C-cup. She is, in height, and wears a black battle kimono that has red flame patterns on the edges of the sleeve, a pink skirt that has just the right length, white belt, black stockings, and a standard wood sandals. Yes, shouted a happy Kushina, your brother has finally returned. We can finally apologize to him. I just hope he'll forgive us, said Minato a bit solemnly. The three women quieted down when they heard him. Mito was the first to speak. Don't worry Tu-chan, I'm sure Naruto ni will understand. Why yeah, I am ss sure Oni-chan will you understand, said Naoko as she stuttered unconfidently, unsure of her own words. Through the years she had developed a stuttering problem whenever her Oni-chan was mentioned. She was really mad at herself for her actions, as well as regretted what happened all those years back. Kushina, Minato, and Mito saw her confidence waver, so they moved to engulf her in a hug. Don't worry, your brother has a big heart. He'll forgive you, said Kushina. Yeah, and who could say no to such a cute little sister, said Mito as she gently pats her head. Why yeah, said Naoko as she started to regain a bit of confidence. Don't worry girls, as long as we show him our love for him. I'm sure we'll be a complete family again, said Minato with the signature namikaze grin. I beg to differ Minato, said an indifferent tone that splashed all their excitement with cold water. Naruto ni, they all shouted in unison as they saw a handsome blonde and a beautiful lavender-haired girl enter the Hokage's office hand in hand. However, they all froze when they saw the scowl and cold eyes directed at them. Hello, Hokage-sama, Kushina, Mito, Naoko, said Naruto, sending shivers down their spine, while Hinata just bowed her head in greetings. Since it looked like they weren't going to snap out of their stupor, Naruto continued, I and Hinata would like to participate in this year's academy graduation exams to get our genin rank. We know how to perform the standard academy jutsus, and as for our other skills, well, you can be the judge of that when we take the exam. Naruto, we can discuss that later. For now can we talk? Asked Minato. Raising an eyebrow, he moved his gaze to everyone in the room then back to the older blonde. He sighed then replied in monotone. If you could forgive my bluntness Hokage-sama, but I don't see the relevance in talking to any of you, making everyone flinch. Naruto, Sochi, please can you not treat us so coldly? We are still your family and Kushina couldn't continue her words when he heard a cold chuckle from Naruto. Family? He asked mockingly. I never knew I was part of one. Well, not until recently, he said, the last part looking at Hinata, making Kushina and Minato look down. Naruto ni please, don't say that. Of course you're part of ours. We love you, just give us a chance to show it, said Mito a bit teary-eyed. Naruto ni, I no weww wronged yu. B but c could yup please f find it I in y your heart to f forgive us, said Naoko in between sobs as Hinata wavered at their sincere words. Naru-kun, whispered Hinata worriedly. She had never seen Naruto this cold before and it somehow scared her. Naruto felt her hold tighten and looked at her then released a sigh. I know Hinaheim, while he pats her on the head. Their exchange didn't go unnoticed by their family, and all eyes now looked at Hinata. The contrast in their treatment was appalling. How could he have such warm eyes and comforting smile towards her, while they were looked down upon like a stone on the side of the road? They all thought as a pang of jealousy crept into his sister's heart. Coughing to get their attention, the blonde said in monotone, I won't forgive any of you, making everyone except Hinata tense up. Kushina almost broke down crying as she bit her lips in frustration. Minato hugged his wife and hung his head down. He couldn't look at Naruto in the eye. Mito felt her knees buckle and almost fainted in disbelief, but she held onto her consciousness only for her legs to give in. And Naoko's reaction was extreme. Her eyes looked dead. But their suffering didn't last long as they caught Naruto say an almost inaudible whisper of, at least not yet. Kushina and Minato snapped their heads forward. Mito thought, I knew it, and almost jumped to hug him if only her legs didn't give in. And Naoko's eyes regained their luster. That one almost inaudible whisper was their salvation. Everyone deducted it as him giving them a chance. He hadn't forgiven them, no, not by far, but they had a chance. Although it wasn't much, but it was still progress. This finally brought smiles on the Hokage and his family's faces. They had a chance for redemption, and that's all they needed. Hinata was happy for them and also for Naruto, but she also let out a giggle as she saw the roller coaster ride of emotions they were all experiencing. Mito and Naoko glared at her for that, but she just shrugged it off like it was nothing. "Now, if you don't mind Hokage-sama, we have an exam that we would like to participate in," said a still indifferent Naruto. "Oh yeah, I'll wait," he said as he looked for some paper and pen. Then he wrote a letter of participation and approval. "Here you go, Naruto, Hinata-san. Just look for Iruka and show this to him before I'm in the academy tomorrow. He will let you participate in the exam. Whether you graduate or not all depends on your skill. Good luck," he said as he gave the paper to his son, fighting the urge to hug him. Naruto nodded and said nothing else before leaving. Hinata on the other hand stepped forward and said, "He gave you a chance, so try your best to win him back," she encouraged with a smile on her face. But before anyone could reply and thank her, her demeanor changed and the room's temperature seemed to have lowered by a few degrees. But she paused as she glared at them with her Byakugan on, making them all flinch. "If you ever hurt Naru-kun again, then a berserk Kyuubi would be the last thing you need to worry about," as her Byakugan flashed blue with a lotus symbol in the middle. Then her demeanor returned and smiled at the Hokage, bowed and then hurriedly scurried to Naruto. Minato smiled wryly at the girl's threat. It reminded him so much of Kushina. Kushina on the other hand voiced her opinion of her, saying, "I like that girl." Mito and Naoko clenched their fist and was about to follow them, but Kushina stopped the two by holding on to their shoulders. "You can't go, you two. Not now at least," said Kushina. "Why not?" asked the two. "Because, I know your emotions are gonna get the best of you and you are going to smother him with affection that he doesn't wish for right now, like some mindless fangirls, and push him away. Just give him some space for now," said Kushina sternly. They both flinched at the statement, unable to deny it. "But how are we supposed to make it up to him if we don't get close?" asked Naoko while Mito nodded in agreement. "Don't worry girls, I have a plan," said Kushina with a grin as she looked at Minato. Making said blonde sweat beads of sweat. The next day, Naruto was sitting on the bed back at Orochimaru's old hideout. He was in a meditating stance, currently wondering how much skill he was going to show in today's exam. As he sat there, another figure quietly approached him from behind. Reaching him, the figure knelt down and planted a kiss on his right cheek. Naruto's eyes snapped open to see a smiling Hinata facing him. "Good morning, Hinaheim," Naruto greeted as he pulled Hinata down onto his lap and kissed her hotly. The Hyuga heiress embraced and kissed Naruto back with the same amount of passion. A minute later, they reluctantly pulled their lips away to catch their breaths. "Did you wait long for me?" Hinata asked as she just exited the shower. "Not really," Naruto said. "Waiting for you never takes long at all, because you'll always chase after me, wanting to overtake me." "Naru-kun," Hinata giggled as she snuggled deeper into his embrace before resting her head on his left shoulder. "Shouldn't we be preparing for the exams, Hinaheim?" Naruto asked. "Being here with you like this for moral support is all the preparation I need," Hinata replied. "I'm confident that we'll become genins together." Naruto chuckled at her antics, then leaned down and kissed her again. Everyone was making their way to the academy. The senior class was up and ready for the genin exams and confident in passing and becoming full-fledged ninjas. Some had visions of prestige and exciting thrill-filled adventures, while others thought that after becoming ninjas they'll earn the approval, liking and acknowledgement of others, or of one Uchiha in particular. They easily found Iruka, since he wasn't that hard to find. I mean, you could literally hear him at the Hokage monument when he uses the big head jutsu. The class was noisy and annoying, as always. One was stuffing his face with potato chips while the other was sleeping. Two girls were arguing without anyone knowing what about. Some were brooding, others remained silent, and a few screamed to make themselves understandable. In other words, it was chaos. It was Iruka's personal hell. Iruka has been their teacher for a long time and it was always the same crap. Sometimes he had the urge to grab his kunai and slash every throat that was present at the time. But all in all, he loved his job, although it was hard sometimes. Soon, Hinata and Naruto entered the class hand in hand with their fingers entwined together. Something happened that everyone thought wasn't possible. It quieted down. The Namikaze princesses were happy to see their Oni-chan once more, and Mito even called out to him to offer a vacant seat. However, he just ignored them and led Hinata to the back and sat beside a pineapple-haired kid and his big-boned friend. Naruto greeted with a "yo" and sat down. Hinata just nodded at them and followed suit. They returned their greetings and busied themselves with what they were doing, mainly sleeping and eating. You know you don't have to be so cold on them, said Hinata as she indicated the Namikaze twins. Naruto didn't reply, looked at their sad expressions and just sighed. Ino, being the gossip queen that she is, immediately asked the duo, Mito-san, Naoko-san, do you know that guy? And why is Hinata-chan with him? Didn't she leave Konoha? They both looked at each other and said, yes, he's our brother Naruto, answered Mito. As for Hinata, we don't know, continued Naoko. What? Screeched our resident pink-haired banshee, he's the Yondaime's missing son. Quiet down Sakura Teme, said Naoko, and yes, is our missing brother. Everyone who heard their conversation began to look at the handsome blonde. Some girls were looking and were drooling a bit at the appearance of the young man, while some of the boys were eyeing Hinata, already making plans on how to approach her. Especially Kiba, who was thinking, I'll beat that guy up and show that woman who is the true Apla, then claim her as my mate. Iruka cleared his throat and everyone sat down. Iruka, well students, as you might have noticed, we have 2 new classmates who will join us in the Genin exams today. Come in front of the class and introduce yourselves. Naruto and Hinata got up on their sits and got in front of the class. My name is Naruto and for some special reasons I do not have a last name, he said, making the class gasp. I'm years old and currently in a relationship with the lovely Hinata. Some of the girls screamed, Kya, as Naruto told them about Hinata, while some boys snickered in envy. Then it was Hinata's turn. Hello everyone, she bowed. My name is Hinata and for some special reason as well I don't have a last name. I'm also years old and in a relationship with Naru-kun. After their introduction, Naruto led Hinata back to their sits like the gentleman he was and waited for Iruka's next instructions. Whispers began to fill the room as they discussed Naruto and Hinata. Ino asked the twins what Naruto meant not having a last name, only for Mito and the usually hyperactive Naoko to quiet down and looked away in shame. Anyway, let's start the exam, shall we? Just follow me, said Iruka. The students walked outside and Iruka said they needed to pull out their shuriken and kunai. Everyone followed the order except for Naruto and Hinata. Iruka, I said to take your shuriken and kunai. Naruto and Hinata both responded by pulling up their sleeves and showing a bright yellow bracelet that had a complex seal written on it. They concentrated chakra into the seal and with a puff of smoke 0 shuriken and 0 kunais came out. Everyone didn't have much of a reaction since storage scrolls were pretty common, especially in a class full of clan heirs. The seal is actually a dimension seal disguised as your run-of-the-mill storage seal. The difference of both seals are like heaven and earth. While storage has almost the same function, it remains as a single storage item seal unless you have a bigger scroll. The dimensional seal, however, actually creates a personal pocket dimension that could store almost anything without limit, and depending on chakra even a biju could be stored. They found the seals on their excursion to Uzushio, or the village hidden in whirlpools, or at least what remained of it. It was the origin place of all Uzumaki, where Naruto was able to find items that were sealed in a tower's basement with a blood seal only the Uzumaki royals could use. Among them were ancient undeciphered scrolls made by the first founder. But Naruto was immediately able to understand them due to his Rinnegan. Oh, so you use storage seals. I see, carry on then. Naruto, you go first since you seem already have yours out. No pun intended, said Iruka. You can do it, Ni-chan, shouted Mito in support. Yeah, you got this, said a stuttering Naoko, which actually flabbergasted everyone. They had never seen her so reserved and stuttering. What was that all about? Thought everyone in class. Naruto looked at his sisters with a deadpan expression, making them quiet down. However, to their surprise, he nodded at them in acknowledgement, making them smile like crazy. Then he turned to Hinata and asked, "Do I get a good luck charm?" Hinata didn't answer but kissed him on the cheeks instead. He blushed at her unexpected action and grinned, while some of the male students snickered. He went to the throwing line and threw all the shuriken at once like an uncaring amateur, making every guy mock him. But they all shut up when they saw all the shurikens hit the bullseye, surprising all the class, even Mito and Naoko. He did the same for his kunais, and by the time he had finished, everyone's jaw had dropped to the floor. Imagine that, he said as he walked off, while Hinata just giggled at her showboating boyfriend. Good aim, praised Iruka. Next Hinata. Good luck, Hinaheim, he said as he kissed her on the cheek. Hinata blushed like a strawberry. Although she did the same for Naruto, it had a different feel when you're at the receiving end. But she snapped out of it immediately when Iruka urged her on. Unlike Naruto, she took the proper stance and threw the shurikens one by one. It all hit the bullseye, and the class was surprised, only for a different reason this time. The shurikens were practically embedded into the wooden log. It must have taken a lot of strength or a good chakra enhancement to pull that off, but they didn't feel any chakra, and looking at Hinata's slim, delicate arms, they questioned how could she pull that off. She also did the same for the kunais, however, before she threw the last one, Kiba remarked something inappropriate, which made Hinata purposely deviate her throw in between the target's legs. She then turned to the crowd and smiled, causing all men to whimper. Iruka's sweat dropped at their results. I guess both of you passed this part of the exam. Naruto and Hinata was just enjoying each other's company until the other students were done throwing. After each and every student had finished, Iruka announced, "Well done everyone, now we will have the sparring matches. First up, Naruto vs Uchiha Sasuke." This got half the future Kunoichi wannabes to scream, "You can do it, Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke-kun." They begun to chant. Hinata, who saw this, just rolled her eyes and thought, and they call themselves Kunoichi. That guy doesn't even acknowledge them. They got into the arena and Sasuke mocked, "HN. Dobi, are you ready to lose to an Uchiha elite?" As he got into the interceptor fist stance that well, the last Uchiha prided himself in using. "Whatever you say, Dug-butt-kun," he said teasingly, making the whole class except for the Sasuke fangirls to laugh out loud. "What did you say to me, Dobi?" asked Sasuke. "You heard me, Dug-butt-kun," repeated Naruto. "How dare you mock Sasuke-kun?" shouted the pink-haired banshee as everyone winced at the volume. Even her fellow fan members. "Shut up, Sakura Teme, before everyone here turns deaf," said Naoko, while Mito along with everyone in the class glared at the pink banshee, making her shut up. "That's it, I was going to show you mercy by ending this quickly. But it looks like you need to be taught a lesson," said Sasuke as he lunged towards Naruto. Naruto just stood there and waited for Sasuke to get close. He even yawned because Duckbutt was too slow. Then his fist finally came, aiming to pummel Naruto in the face. He heard the worried shouts of Mito and Naoko, while Hinata just winked at him, making him grin. To class's surprise, it didn't hit as Naruto dodged in the last second. However, as if expecting him to dodge, Sasuke corrected himself mid-punch and used the momentum to kick Naruto. Too slow, thought Naruto as he dodged the kick by stepping back once. Due to the unexpected action, Sasuke hit the air and got unbalanced. Taking the advantage, Naruto tripped Sasuke's foot, making said duck butt hit the ground face first. Angered for such humiliation, Sasuke was about to stand up, when he felt sudden pressure on his back, making him hit the floor once more. He looked up and saw Naruto's foot planted on him. "I demand you remove your foot, Dobi," he said with an angry tone. "Yeah, let go of Sasuke-kun," said our favorite banshee. Our resident blonde smirked at his arrogance, but winced at the banshee's screech. He sighed, but didn't respond and just kicked him in the face, knocking him out. "Winner Naruto," shouted Iruka. After that, the whole test became boring. Hinata was paired against a civilian and won, and although secretly, he watched his sisters win their match using their father's signature fighting style, the hummingbird. The next part was to make a perfect henge, a transformation jutsu. All students made a perfect copy of Iruka, even Naruto and Hinata. Then there was the last part, the clone jutsu. Hinata had just finished her turn, and finally it was Naruto's turn. He walked into the room with Iruka and his assistant Mizuki in it. Naruto was cracking his neck. "All right, how many do you need?" "Iruka, just 3 should be enough." Naruto got an evil smirk on his face. "Clone jutsu." 3 perfect clones of Naruto appeared. "Great, all right, you pass," said Iruka as he handed him his leaf protector. Naruto turned to leave and dispelled his clones. One went in a puff of smoke, another in water, and the last with rocks. The 2 Chunin were flabbergasted. A genin actually knows how to perform different types of clones. A shadow clone, a water clone, and a rock boulder clone. "Looks like we have a prodigy in our midst," said Iruka as Mizuki just quietly snickered. The exams were over and the students had to turn back tomorrow for their group assignments. Naruto and Hinata were about to leave when they heard two familiar voices calling out to them. Ni-chan, Hinata-san, called out Naoko and Mito, hoping that he wouldn't ignore them. Inwardly, Naruto was struggling to keep calm. Then he felt someone hold his hands. He looked at who it was and saw Hinata giving him a smile. It brought him confidence. "Yo," greeted the blonde, no longer indifferent to them, which greatly surprised them. Hinata on the other hand just bowed like a lady in greetings. "Ni-chan, Hinata-san, we saw your skills with the shurikens and your sparring matches, you two were amazing. It was high time that Teme was knocked down a few pegs," said Mito in excitement. "Why yeah, you were awesome. I mean, both of you were," said Naoko the last part without stuttering. Naruto actually smiled at her honest praise and said, "Thank you," which made both sisters blush. "We saw both your skills as well, and I had to say you were better than most of them," said Hinata. "Yeah, you two did great. Your hummingbird stance were quite refined," said Naruto, making the two blush even more. "Thank you, Ni-chan, Hinata-san," said Mito as she smiled brightly. "Yeah, thank you, Naruto-ni, Hinata-ne-chan," said Naoko, no longer stuttering, but surprising Hinata and Naruto at such an intimate honorific. "Era ne-chan, huh? Ufufu," asked Hinata as she laughed mischievously. "I am sorry if I didn't mean," said Naoko immediately. No, it's okay. I kind of like it actually, and I guess it's appropriate," said Hinata, confusing the two. "Appropriate?" they asked. "Let me explain, I'm currently your brother's girlfriend and future wife. Indirectly you could say I'm really your Ne-chan," explained Hinata. "WWI wife," exclaimed the two as they looked at Naruto, who didn't deny it. "Anyways, we're about to get some dinner. Would you like to join us?" asked Hinata. "Oh, I'm sorry Hinata Ne-chan, but we can't. Mom said she was going to cook a feast today to congratulate us," Naoko said. "But you could come with us if you want," suggested Mito a little hopefully. "No," shouted the immediate reply of Naruto, startling the two. His face returned from being cold and indifferent. "Let's go, Hinaheim," he said while turning back and leaving. He could handle some interactions with his sisters, but that doesn't mean he has forgiven them. And his parents are still a landmine for him. He will eventually forgive them. Maybe, I think? Well, I hope. I blame you guys for being undecided, but not right now. I'm sorry you two, but it seems we'll have to take a rain check. Oh, and don't worry about him," she pointed at Naruto. "Just give him a bit more time and I'm sure he'll eventually give in. I mean, who could possibly say no to such cute sisters?" she said as she pat their heads, remembering her time with Hanabi. She misses her sister very much, but she didn't show it. Naruto had already promised her that he will do something about the clan. All she needed to do was to trust him, because he never goes back on his words. "Now scurry along, wouldn't want your parents to wait," said Hinata as she winked at them before hurrying to Naruto's side. "Okay. Bye-bye Hinata-san, Hinata-ne-chan," replied the two as they waved goodbye to Hinata. After Hinata and Naruto left, a crimson-haired woman stood outside, standing in the front of the academy with the rest of their parents until she heard a voice catching her attention. "Ka-chan." The older woman turned to see a blonde-haired girl run up to her and hug her tightly, while a red-haired girl followed suit, walking with a smile on her face. "Ah, Naoko, Mito, how did it go?" Namikaze Kushina asked as she added the red-hair Mito into the hug. The two girls released the hug from their mother. Naoko pointed to her forehead protector on around her head and gave an energetic grin. "We passed, it was easy." The red-haired Mito nodded in agreement with a small smile graced on her lips. Kushina smiled at her daughters. "I'm so proud of you two. If only your father could be here to see you, but he had important business to tend to at the Hokage Tower today. I'm sure he'd love to hear about this tonight over dinner." The girls beamed as they loved to see their father's reaction to their promotion to genin. Kushina smiled brightly, but it dropped as she looked around for a certain blonde. "Have you girls seen Naruto? Did he do well?" she asked anxiously. Hearing this, both Mito and Naoko beamed an idolizing smile. "Ni-chan was great," shouted Naoko. Kushina noticed her lack of stuttering. "Yeah, he aced all the exams, the same for Hinata-san. Although, she lost point in the kunai test, but she is still undoubtedly the top kunoichi," said Mito. "Yeah, and Oni-chan is the rookie of the year," said Naoko, fist bumping the air. Really? Asked Kushina in disbelief. She didn't knew they were so skilled. Her and Minato even doubted if they could pass. Really, and that's not all, said Naoko. Naruto ni wasn't cold and indifferent towards us. And Hinata Ne-chan was really nice. Kushina noted the Ne-chan part on the Hyuga girl's name, but didn't ask her about it and let her continue. Yeah, Ne-chan even praised us. He said we were great in utilizing the hummingbird style, said Mito smugly, which was new for Kushina as she didn't really boast about anything even when complimented by her and Minato. That's great, but where's your brother? Asked Kushina a bit distraught. Mito and Naoko looked at each other and said, we were having a great conversation, said Mito, and Hinata Ne-chan even invited us to eat dinner together. Continued Naoko. But we told them you were cooking a feast and couldn't go, then, said Naoko as she looked towards Mito. Then, did you invite them to come with you? Asked Kushina a bit hopefully. She really wished for a dinner with a complete family. Yes, I did suggest it, answered Mito, but that was when Ne-chan immediately said no. His attitude returned to being scary, said Naoko getting goosebumps remembering his cold eyes, and left without saying anything else. It was Hinata-san that said to leave him be for now, said Mito. Yeah, Hinata Ne-chan said he'll eventually give in, she was really nice. I thought she was like those other Hyugas with a stick up their butts, but boy was I wrong. She even praised us and pat me on the head and called me cute, said Naoko boasting. Mito on the side blushed, she remembered Hinata doing the same for her and it really felt nice. I see, said with Kushina a melancholic smile, anyways, let's go home. I'm sure your father would love to hear all about this. Especially your hummingbird style which even your brother praised. Yes. Yeah, replied Mito and Naoko. Next day, Naruto was peacefully sleeping but begun to stir when he felt something warm and fluffy on his chest. He opened his eyes and looked down. What he saw was probably the most adorable angel there ever existed. Hinata was hugging him on the waist as her head was placed on his chest sleeping. Naruto returned her hug and stayed still, just enjoying the warmth of his beloved. 5 more minutes passed and Hinata begun to stir. Naruto greeted her good morning as he kissed her on the forehead. She smiled but didn't open her eyes. She felt very comfortable and didn't want to leave her lover's warmth, so she snuggled closer and buried her face further on his chest. Naruto chuckled at her cute girlfriend and caressed her hair. Hinaheim, it's time to wake up, he whispered. It's graduation day today so we need to get ready. No, I don't want to, said Hinata as she acted spoiled. You are required to be my pillow and pat me on the head. He didn't respond and just lifted her chin and kissed her passionately on the lips. Her eyes widened and let out a moan, before Naruto pulled away. Let's get up now, okay Hinaheim, he said as Hinata responded with a nod absent-mindedly. Naruto and Hinata arrived at the academy about 30 minutes before the team announcements, and proceeded to take their seat in the back of the room. Naru-kun, do you think we'd be on the same team? Asked Hinata concernedly. She really wanted to be on the same team as Naruto. Don't worry Hinaheim, with the results of our exams yesterday it's practically guaranteed that we're on the same team, said Naruto assuring her lover. Since the rookie of the year and the best kunoichi is always on the same team. Naruto was confident that both of them would be teammates. Cough with benefits. I hope so, she whispered to herself. Naruto noticed this and pat her head. Hinata felt good and hugged Naruto's left arm, while she rests her head on his shoulder. Then, they were pulled out of their little world by the classroom door being slammed open, and his fellow graduates poured into the room. Naruto was sure that most of them weren't going to go far or would be killed soon, but there were some, mostly the children from clans, who would survive. It was a cruel evaluation, but whoever said being a ninja was all friendship and unicorns. Hinata saw Mito and Naoko enter the classroom. They made eye contact and Hinata waved at them. Naoko, who saw this, immediately ran to them and greeted, "Good morning, Naruto ni, Hinata Ne-chan." While Mito followed soon after and greeted, "Good morning Hinata-san, Ni-chan." "Good morning you too," the lavender-haired beauty greeted while she pinched Naruto under the table and eyed him to do the same. "Good morning," said Naruto in monotone, but both sisters were happy just the same when their brother greeted them. Both of them sat beside Hinata and had a little small talk. Naruto would join from time to time to input some of his opinion. While both sisters tried to know more about their brother and kept asking him questions, Naruto ignored them, but Hinata kept answering in his place, much to his dismay. Although, she did keep their training and strength a secret. 0 minutes passed and everyone was already doing their own thing, but then a rumbling sound was heard, followed by 2 shrieks. The door was slammed open, again. Then 2 people raced towards a certain duck butt's side, all while quarreling about who was first. These were Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno, subspecies considered useless by the majority of the ninja world, called fangirls. He then refocused his attention to Hinata, making sure she doesn't spill anything embarrassing to his sisters. But then their attention was stolen once more when the pink-haired banshee rattled on about Dogboy stealing Sasuke's first kiss. Said Dogboy was then beat up to a pulp by the Sasuke fangirls. They all eventually quieted down when Iruka entered and silenced them with his signature big head jutsu. "Be quiet, you brats, and get to your seats," he started. "Now I just want to say that I'm proud of each of you as you are taking." Not wanting to actually pay attention to this pointless speech, Naruto, Hinata and the twins did the most logical thing they thought of. Continued with their small talk. "Now for the team placements," said Iruka, which the whole class's attention, including Naruto and his group. Comment. Team. Ash Ketchum, Misty, Brock. Your team leader is Oak. Team. Son Goku, Krillin, Yamcha. Your team leader is Roshi. Team. Kirito, Asuna, Klein. Your team leader is Heathcliff. Team. Sora, Shiro, Stephanie Dola. Your team leader is Tet. With each passing team, Naruto's hope for decent teammates increases, since it looked like all the civilians were being grouped together. Team. Grayson, Tim Drake, Jason Todd. Your team leader is Bruce Wayne. Team. Rias Gremory, Issei Hyodo, Akano Himejima. Your team leader is Azazel. As for team, this team is going to be a bit of a special case. Team. Uchiha Sasuke, Mito Namikaze, Naoko Namikaze. What? Why do I have to be teamed up with this arrogant Teme? Said Naoko, pointing at Sasuke. While Mito stared at his sensei questioningly as well. What did you say, Dobi? Asked Duck Butt threateningly as he glared at both sisters, which was currently ignoring him now, since Hinata started to calm them down by patting their heads. Then his fangirls joined in since their Sasuke was ignored. Naoko was going to respond to them, but Iruka calmed them down with a, "Shut up all of you." Now where was I? Like I said, team will be Sasuke Uchiha, Mito and Naoko Namikaze, plus Naruto, and Hinata. Your team leaders will be Hitaki Kakashi, and Kushina Namikaze. Why do I have to be grouped with a bunch of clowns? Sasuke thought. But then again, having an S-class kunoichi teach me might prove to be worth it. Then I'll be a step closer to revenge. Yes, shouted Naoko, all excited. Her mom, twin sister, big sister figure, and beloved brother was all on the same team. It's like a family, she thought. If only that Teme wasn't around, everything would have been perfect. Mito had the same reaction as Naoko, and even needed to cover her mouth because she couldn't control her smirk. Hinata thought their reactions were cute and laughed, ufu, as she covered her own mouth, but narrowed her eyes at the mention of Kushina's name. Naruto, on the other hand, had a deadpan expression. I should have known they'd pull something like this, he thought while sighing. Iruka continued, not minding the whirlpool of emotions his students were feeling. Team. Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, Haruno Sakura. What? Why do I have to be grouped with Bug Boy and the Mutt? Screeched our favorite resident banshee. What did you say, Pinky? Asked Kiba, growling. While Shino didn't react, but inwardly he had been quietly formulating a plan to make Sakura's life miserable. Shut up, said Iruka with the big head jutsu that caught their attention. Now your team leader is Kurenai Yuhi. Team is still in rotation. Team 0 Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akamichi, and Shikamaru Nara. Your team leader will be Asuma Sarutobi. Team 0 didn't have much of a reaction since they were already informed by their parents beforehand. Only Ino had a bit of a sulking face as she couldn't be on the same team as her precious Sasuke-kun. Your senseis will arrive in 1 hour, until then you have free time and good luck in your future. Iruka explained while leaving, and as soon as he closed the door the room erupted in talking. Naruto, Hinata and the twins returned to their small talk. Sasuke didn't join in as he just kept on brooding. An hour passed and Junins started to come in the room. One by one their teams were called. But Team S senseis had yet to come. Then another hour passed, and everyone was starting to get annoyed. Frustrated Naoko went to set up a simple prank for revenge. This actually got Naruto's attention as he smirked. He gave her a few advice for the trap and even went to help her set up a few that she didn't understood. It greatly surprised Naoko and the others. But Naoko was still incredibly happy that her Oni-chan was helping her. Mito got a little jealous and wanted to help out as well. But Hinata stopped her saying, "You'll get your chance with your brother as well. For now let Naoko enjoy her little time with him." Mito reluctantly nodded. But she knew Hinata-san was right as she didn't know the first thing about traps, so instead she just watched her siblings working together with a warm smile. She was jealous, but she was more happy for Naoko. A few minutes later and everything was set. Both got back to their seats laughing mischievously. "Enjoying your time with your sister, I see," said Hinata teasingly. As Naoko, who heard her, turned red, she just kept quiet but had a large happy smirk on her face. Naruto on the other hand just gave her a grin. He sat down besides her and whispered to her ear, "Why is my Hinaheim jealous?" Feeling his hot breath through her ears gave her shivers. She was caught off guard and blushed hard. She embarrassedly hmmped and said, "Who would be jealous of you?" Naoko and Mito both giggled at their antics, effectively turning Hinata into a strawberry-colored ninja. Sasuke, who was on the side, just brooded and thought, "Fools. As if those simple traps could catch a Junin off Gua." Before Sasuke could finish, the door was slammed open, again. Then a red-haired beauty with a sword strapped on her back could be seen dragging a white-haired male who had a third of his face covered. He was currently crying over a partially ripped orange book. A few meters in, and they've triggered the trap Naoko and Naruto set up. They had a questioning look on their face when they saw the mechanism of the trap. How simple, they thought, as they got ready for anything. First was water tag that Naruto uses for extinguishing fires. They were able to dodge it by jumping up. But the second mechanism clicked, and a hail of paintballs fired towards the two elite Junins. Kushina pulled out her sword and deflected them one by one with incredible skill without getting any paint on her. Kakashi on the other hand substituted to the nearest chair. After that both Junins came out unscathed and went towards the center of the room. "Nice try you guys, Kushina couldn't finish her word as a click was heard underneath their foot. Looking down she saw a baseball-sized paintball with a non-lethal explosive tag rolling and hitting their shoes. Boom! Splash! Splash! Kakashi was late to react and was painted from head to toe in yellow, and Kushina almost got away with a substitution, but was a second too late and was still painted yellow on her left hand. The now yellow Kakashi stood there with an irked expression saying, "My first impression of you guys, very bad." While Kushina was eyeing his yellow-haired princess, who surprisingly hid behind Hinata and her brother. The latter had a grin on his face, not a cold one but a genuine grin. While Mito, in a beauty with lavender hair, was whispering to both blondes, "Too far," and scolding them. She couldn't help but smile at the scene, then said, "Meet me on the roof in 10 minutes, Kakashi. Go home and take a bath. I'll handle introductions for today." Kakashi nodded, then sent another glare towards both blondes and flickered away. "Let's go," said Kushina, then flickered, disappearing in a swirl of leaves. Everyone followed suit soon after. THSTA all for now. If you enjoy then please like, share and do comments.